start talking. I was going to start with a story anyway. I say that I've got 30 years of experience in information security, even though I'm only 42. I'll let you do the math. That's obviously 12. And that's because when I got my first computer, I realized by connecting to the internet, you can, connect to more than just the internet. You could war dial and find all kinds of things. My parents they purchased the cheapest dial-up plan, so we had data caps. So, I had to get past that. So we broke into the local ISP and broke into the school network. Why did we do that? Not to change our grades. It's because we wanted to have all the combinations to all the lockers so that we could keep our books in different parts of the school. So going forward, I've done a lot of technical work. I've done system engineering and penetration testing and that sort of thing. And that's all technical work, right? And so when we think of a lot of these kinds of information security things, especially penetration testing, we think of it as technical in nature. And I think that we need to get past that because we're missing part of it. So as Yogi Berra, kind of to paraphrase what he said, 90% of penetration testing is technical. The other half is GRC. And so that's what we're kind of talking about today, is kind of a thing that I think that a lot of people are missing in terms of doing penetration testing, receiving penetration testing reports. So I hope we can make this apply to a pen tester or someone on the other side of the report who's receiving it, and how we can make that better. So what's GRC? Does everybody know what that is? All right, well, a lot of people see this as, it's paperwork, bureaucracy, our least favorite part of the job. It's honestly one of the most important things. NIST came out with their new cybersecurity framework last year, 2.0, and the biggest change that I think they made was that they added a domain called govern. They realized that we need to pull that governance out because we're not really doing it, and it needs to be a separate thing. And if you look at the little wheel that they have, govern encompasses the entire thing. So governance is who decides and how. And if you're in IT, if you're in information security, maybe at the analyst level, maybe even an IT manager, maybe even a CISO, governance should be more than you. Governance should really be board of directors, owners, the C-suite, because we need to make decisions based on the business impact, and that's what we're going to really talk about today. Yeah, and that's cool. That's okay. And the mouse isn't working.
No, just Alt-Tab.
Alt-Tab.
Alt-Tab will take it right back to the presentation. It shut down again.
Okay, so we can talk about risk. Risk is the things that affect the business, right? And risk is the one that we tend to understand, that we, maybe have a password policy or something like that, and, we're looking at the risk of that. If you're doing things like deciding that we need to install critical security patches, that's risk management. Compliance, that's the part everybody hates. For most IT people, that's maybe taking a screenshot. I gave a talk last week for all of the local IT directors for all the counties, and we talked about how compliance doesn't have to be this big burden, and we talked about how information security can lead compliance. Totally off topic from what we're doing here, though. Still not going?
I got it. I'll take care of you.
So now I got to do it from memory. So the problem that we're facing from the organization side is that your penetration tests typically end up getting stuck at IT manager, IT security analyst, something like that, right? We receive the report, we go through it, we see some problems, maybe we put in some tickets, that we're going to fix this, that, and the other thing. We report to management, hey, we had 3 highs, 5 mediums. Don't worry about the highs. We've re-rated them, or we're doing this other thing, whatever, right? And then it gets filed away. Maybe the next person to ever see that report is maybe some kind of compliance audit or some compliance officer making sure that we've done it, right? Is that the process for anyone in your organizations? No one's willing to? I see a couple. That's okay. You don't have to admit it. Oh, we died again.
It's closing. I apologize, guys. I don't know what the issue is.
Let's I'm just going to put my slides up so I can see them. Apparently that was the problem. So the problem for the pen tester is, if you've ever read a pen test report, what is it? It's findings. We found a SQL injection. We did it by doing this, and we give you 15 screenshots of what we did. Remediation, secure coding practices. Right? I mean, it's not horribly helpful to, even most IT people, they may not fully understand what they're looking at. And so we're missing out there too on the pen test side, on the reporting side. The thing that we're missing is business impact. We need to be able to translate what we're doing on the pen test side to how that impacts the business. Everyone following along? Yes. So for the pen tester, it's the same kind of thing. We're just generating a report, and away it goes. At best, on the client side, on the pen tester side, administration is getting a pretty little chart, shows how many are there, right? And the board, what is the board going to hear? We completed our pen test as part of our compliance program. Box checked. Everything's good. Some regulations are actually starting to change that. For example, Department of Financial Services regulations that apply to like insurance companies and state chartered banks and that sort of thing. They just changed that to say that unresolved high risks must be reported to the board. So that's the first one that I know of that's starting to kind of make that change. So what's going on here? I should add one other thing. How many times do we see the same problem come up over and over again, right? We might have put in a ticket to say, hey, the SSL configurations on our web server are not correct, and we send it over as a ticket. It doesn't get fixed. Maybe the engineer or admin doesn't know how to fix it. Maybe they just didn't see it as a problem, whatever, and it keeps coming up. From my perspective, having done pen test reports, in fact, I just talked to a client about this last week. I told them, I'm pretty sure that all we did was change the date on this report because nothing has changed in terms of what you've done. And for that, that's a governance failure. So these technical findings that keep coming up over and over again, us filing it away, that's the symptom. It's not the cause. And the big one, the big takeaway, is that we really need to start taking these technical reports. It could be pen testing, we could take any of them, vulnerability assessments, that sort of thing, and they need to be translated and moved up the organization. That's what governance is. Governance is involving the organization, deciding how we're going to do it, figuring out what our risk appetite is. And a lot of times, you may not understand the risk appetite of the organization, because you may not understand what the priorities of the organization are. Thank you. So let's look at some case studies. So we've got 2 case studies, and I want to look at the technical problem, but then I want to figure out if we can map out what the governance problem is. The systemic problem. Why is the issue systemic? What are we missing here? So the hint is that governance is usually a process or communication issue. All right. First case study, we got a healthcare organization. Our finding on our penetration test is that we've got reused, easy-to-guess passwords. Any guess on what we might call the technical problem in this case? I think it's a dead giveaway. Our password policy, right? Our password settings, or the way that we're educating. Poor password policy. Any ideas what the governance issue might be?
You might have employees
Oh, go ahead. No, seriously.
have employees who are resistant to change, who are saying 16 characters is too long, we're not going to do that. And then
Right.
pull up the chain and say, well, they're just not going to do it.
Right.
I have
Yep.
to change my password every 90 days, so I'm going to use summer 1, summer 2, summer 3.
Yep. Honestly, no. Yeah, the CEO is usually the biggest. Yeah. So the summer one. Little sidebar. When we do penetration testing and we're able to get in using passwords, the first one we always try is season year, and then maybe season year exclamation point. It's almost guaranteed. You give me 500 employees, and I guarantee we're going to be able to get in using that password. You better have MFA. So what's the problem? We're not validating the policy. We don't have any way that, we're making sure that the policy's there or the policy's effective. Maybe some control gaps. We've got exceptions. Maybe we've got, in healthcare, you've got this doctor that's been here for 20 years and his password's been the same for 20 years, and, I'll take my business somewhere else. I've got some former colleagues from Crouse Hospital. I'm sure they're nodding their head because that is an exact example in that case. This is not this is not them, but that's what we've seen. Lack of proper risk management. We're not taking what could happen with a password breach and tying that to the impact on the business. So for the business, especially in healthcare, it's patient safety. I was talking in the speaker's room with some other people about a ransomware event that I worked on, and how Erie County Medical Center, another big ransomware event, and it was patient safety. That was the problem, and so it was not tied back to the risks. This one I think's a little bit easier. So we got a software vendor. They've got predictable codes. The way that they log into their website is you give them your email. If your email is in the system, they're going to email you a randomly generated code. We find out that if you send two emails at the same time, yours and theirs, even if yours isn't an account, the numbers are the same. SQL injection. We've been playing whack-a-mole with this company on SQL injection for years. They'll fix the name field, and then all of a sudden the address field, and then now we're on city. And now we're on this other form. No tenant isolation. Again, predictable number. Just change the number. You're in the new tenant. So we've got customers saying, hey, we've got this, we're looking like we've got some vulnerabilities. Can you look at this? What's the technical issues? Lack of secure coding practices. Any guesses on what the governance issue is going to be here?
DLC process review.
Yeah, process and review.
Security's not a part of it.
Yeah, security is not part of it. Leadership is either not informed or we're not engaged. In this case, the business was more concerned about pushing product. They were willing to push product at the risk of security. Yeah?
So then how do you handle something like the Microsoft model is I'm going to push it and patch it next month?
Well, they're 5 years in and still haven't patched. So if you do want to do push and patch, I mean, I guess you could. But this was one of the big ones where I started shifting from the conversation of let's give technical reports to really starting to get down to business impacts. In this case, they dealt with HIPAA data. And so part of our business impact was to say, here's what happens, and it could result in this. The other one, we've been doing internal penetration testing a lot more now. Another Department of Financial Services requirement is to do internal penetration testing. We inevitably, we turn on a tool called Responder. It's going to start trying to take over DNS. When it does, we start getting NTLM hashes, which are the Windows hashes, and we may or may not get in. Okay, that's the technical finding. If we tried explaining that to a customer, they're just going to gloss over. They'd be like, well, even if you say, okay, well, you really need to fix this, it doesn't really mean much to them. So the conversation becomes instead, all right, we found these things. I'm not even going to explain what it really means to you. Let's just talk about what happens when this happens. So that's that kind of shift to business impact. We need to be able to explain it. So what's going on? Again, technical issues are the symptoms, but governance failures are the root cause. The reason why it's happening over and over again is because not enough people are necessarily involved. It's maybe the risk isn't being managed and tracked. It's just being filed away. We're calling the pen test just an exercise. Yeah, okay, we may find some criticals and some highs. We're going to fix some stuff, don't get me wrong. But we're not following it through the full process. And again, if you give this to an auditor, they don't know what the heck they're looking at. No offense if there's any auditors in here. They just have too much to look at. They say, okay, yeah, you did a pen test, great. So what do we need to do? We need to close the loop. Right now, test, report, forget. We need to move that to test, move to a risk register, which we'll talk about in a minute, assign an owner, report it, and don't just report it to your peers over lunch. We need to report it up. We need the board of directors to know, here's what we've got. Here's how to fix it. We also need direction from the board or senior leadership to say, what level of risk are you willing to accept? It's called risk appetite. That software company, their risk appetite, very low. Or high, very high. Let it happen. We're not worried about it. But we need to keep it visible and actionable. It can't be just something we forget. It can't just be a ticket that we threw in and hope it gets done. The other thing, we need to make sure that whatever caused the finding is fixed as well. And not just, okay, SSL configurations on our web servers. By default, they're not right. Okay, we can say, whoops, we forgot to fix that. But really, the governance issue is that we don't have a process to make sure that doesn't happen. So, roles and responsibilities. Everyone's got one. If your organization's really small, you might be the sucker that has most of these. Analysts and engineers, we need to identify, remediate. We're already doing that. But we also need to provide the context. I think I talked about last week actually it was on a podcast a couple weeks ago. I said one of the most difficult skills in IT, in information security, is being able to translate technical things into business context. I think that's the skill that we should all be working on. Managers in the security team, here we go, translate those findings into risk language. What's going to be the impact to the business if this happens? Okay, yeah, it's inconvenient that you're going to have to put in that 16-character password, but the impact is going to be, look, they got in on that pen test. Look, they did it 2 years in a row. if you're the CEO and we get in and they get into you, everyone knows the CEO's name. That's easy to get for most every organization. We may not know everyone that works in IT and sales and all that other thing, senior leadership. And then what about all that information you've got within the CEO account? So if you're in GRC or compliance, we need to be tracking this. We need to escalate, tie it to the frameworks, which we'll talk about in just a second. And the executive and the board, they need to be engaged. They may not need to understand all of it. Yes, sir.
So, just an observation.
Yeah.
So I look at what you've done, and I agree in principle the things that are up here, but you're talking about once the report is delivered, right, what is the ownership model for the remediation for that, right?
Yep.
What is the risk associated with that? But what you haven't talked about is what happens at the front end, right? And so at the front end of a pen test engagement, right, there's a scope of work that has to be agreed to.
Right.
That scope of work is based around, what is the riskiest elements of the business?
Right.
What can you test? What can't you test?
Right.
When can you test? So those rules of engagement, all right, also are part of this entire pen test. So when you think about GRC, you have to be thinking about it at the scope, at the inception of the pen test to make sure that what you're getting out of the back end addresses those initial concerns.
Oh, absolutely. 100% agree. 100% agree. That's the presentation that I do next week. No, okay. No, I mean, we really could look at the full pen test process. And you're right. And a lot of times it becomes that technical effort of, okay, here's my IT block, here's my IP blocks, keep it to light web, don't do this, that sort of thing. The same kind of problem there that, we really should be looking at it for, really everything should be. Right down to, if we're going to, change a setting on the firewall, that technically is a GRC process. So yeah, we could take we can go down a rabbit hole that I'd have you all asleep, most of you. So again, the board, they may not need to know what all the problems are, or what they all, they don't need to have necessarily that full technical expertise, but they really need to understand what the result is, what that business impact looks like. And we need to be able to get that to them. Let them make that decision. You don't want to be the person that made the decision, when something bad happens too. That's another conversation, but. All right, so how are we going to report what works? We're going to translate those technical findings into business risk language. So our example of our SQL injection, we're going to report customer records are at risk, right? We're going to report that we've had this technical finding. On the IT side, yeah, we got to figure out the secure coding practices and that sort of thing we need to fix, our software development lifecycle. But we need the board and management to understand that this problem directly impacts access to our data. Hopefully, that gets their attention a little bit more, other than to say, yeah, we had a high, we're working on it, or hey, last year we had 4, now we're down to 3, even though 3 of them were the same from last year. Metrics that matter. Okay, right there, I walked right into that one. Metrics that matter. So we need to have unresolved findings, repeat issues. We need to be tracking, what happened from last year to this year. Are we seeing the same thing? Okay, even if we fixed the problem from last year, let's go back to that SSL thing. We fixed all our problems from last year. We got good TLS 1.3 and all our good ciphers and yada, 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 whatever. And we stood up a new portal and we're off again. 2 different problems, technically, right? Different server. But we need to be able to put that together and say, hey, we got a problem there. And then we need to metrics, dashboards. What do we got going on? So that we can track it. Again, not just at that IT level, not just at the IT manager and the information security analyst. Map it to the frameworks and the structures. Yes?
So translating the actual technical issue that we found out into a language that they can understand or a business impact, where can we bring in the balance of not making it more generic, right? So I am a cybersecurity specialist and I do risk assessments all day in and day out. So all the risks or everything that we want to bring in value for an organization boils down to reputation, financial loss, data loss.
Yep.
Right? So how do we make them more aware? Like if there is a CEO that I'm talking to, a customer of ours, I know so he knows, and it's not a shocker also. So if he has been doing compliance assessments or penetration testing since 5 years, he knows that his data is at risk at some point. Like
Right.
the level changes.
Right.
He knows that there is a financial, so a ransomware is a financial, they have this broad understanding in general.
Right.
How do we make it more specific? Like, how is password policies business impact different from SQL injections, business impact?
Yeah, so part of that risk is, right, we're looking at impact likelihood, right, to rate the risk. And we can take some of them and tie them all together. So we take that SQL injection and that problem with the coding, the tenant coding, that's one problem, software development lifecycle, if you look at it. So that's the business problem, software development lifecycle. Does that make sense? Without going too far? Yes, sir.
I would add, like, you want to frame it to these, we'll say not technical leaders, but business leaders that they're owning that risk. They need to say, if we're not going to fund the remediation, then that ownership of that risk falls on them. And here's the worst possible outcome. All of our customer data is exposed, and this will lead to lawsuits and regulatory impacts and reputational impacts. We're going to lose lots of customers. We're going to have lots of lawsuits. Framing it in that terms for what is the impact to the business leader that has to accept that risk, I think helps a lot.
Yes.
Is the next step.
Yes. And when you get that into like a risk register and stuff, then we're tracking it. Sorry, I skipped over you. I like this, that we're more interactive.
I think that I just want to, it sounds a little cynical, but we tie it to them. So
Yes.
what we're trying to do now is we don't even talk about this. We'll do it with the auditors and stuff like that. We just say, can we defend you technically via compliance legally? Right? Yeah, red, green, so forth.
Yep.
Will this impact shareholder value? Right? And then we know they're shareholders, right?
Yep.
If you don't fix it, you're going to get hit too.
Yep.
Right? And that's how the level we're breaking it down right now. And then no more. We've got 4 metrics there, and then we have 3 things that we need to do. You need to invest in if you don't want this to happen. That's it. But then it's sad, but you just have to tie it to what the financial impact is to them.
Yes. So taking like ransomware, we can say that that's an existential threat that we're all going to have. But the problem is that we need to find out where that threat level is. That's risk management. You were going to say something. Yeah.
The only other thing you have to do with that is not every issue the sky is falling.
Thank you.
Yes.
You have to score it appropriately with that likelihood and or the impact. Hey, yeah, this looks like it could be a bad deal, but we're doing these other things that may mitigate, or we're doing something that will shield you. Doesn't mean automatically accept it. Other talks have talked about, those are what they're targeting now. But we can't go in there every single time and say that the sky is falling. You have to bring it back, and you have to put it on a reasonable scale. Yeah, this is a real big problem. SQL injection, loss of all of our records, or whatever that is that motivates them. Comes down to money all the time.
Yep.
But you have to do it in a fashion that when it is critical, they recognize it's critical, and not just sky is falling every time.
Yes. 100% agree. So, and that right there is aligning those IT operations with the business risk priorities. In the back.
One thing I was just going to say that I've noticed when doing compliance risk management, one of the things I've noticed over the years is the underwriting process being so detailed now, cybersecurity.
Yep.
Fire, and really change sort of how our CEO, COO view this stuff, and it's really pushed them because we say, listen, if we don't do this, we might not get cyber insurance, or we might not get favorable rates for what we need. And the next thing I know, they're on calls with IT saying, this is your priority.
Yes. I think it's funny you say that. About 60% of our clients are insurance carriers, so I can speak to this very well. The thing that seems to be motivating companies more lately is that stupid insurance questionnaire more than anything. And then making sure that the right person is filling it out. We've also had the problem, years ago that, some accounting clerk was filling out the PCI questionnaire and just saying yes to everything. Clearly not the case, but yes. And that's part of that risk management too. I mean, if we went down that rabbit hole, the different types of risk responses that we have, and insurance being a risk transfer, that is technically a risk response, but we need to, are we willing to accept that risk? Yeah.
Statement question. So statement with the GRC being put in place in the last 2 years in my organization, a lot of pushback is coming from the board and the executive team. You're a money pit. Like, we just keep throwing money at you, and you keep coming back next year and you want more money.
Yep.
That conversation has turned into my rebuttal back to was like, how many days can our company survive being down?
Yep.
Day, 2 days, whatever the answer is, there's a dollar amount tied to that.
Yep.
I'm also a very firm believer on it doesn't matter if you spend $10,000 or $1 million on cybersecurity. If somebody wants to get in,
They're going to get in.
It's all about how to mitigate it and bring back integrity back to your organization. So, statement for that. Question.
Yes.
With the insurance companies, I know Tokyo Marina Insurance just had us where I had to reach out to their IT folks instead of just doing a checkbox. So, oh yeah, we're doing this compliance. I have to prove it now.
Yep, some of them are doing that.
Seeing in the market now?
They're just starting to, because a lot of the questionnaires have always been yes, no, and there is no maybe. Or there is no, well, no because, reasonable compensating controls. So yeah, I think, let's see where we're at on time. We still got like 10 minutes. I don't mind the questions. I'm actually, this is more fun. So log the pen test findings in a simple risk register. We started kind of talking about that. Who has a risk register? Okay. Who has it outside of Excel and something more complicated than Excel? You guys must work for big companies. No, a risk register can be as simple as an Excel spreadsheet. What's the risk? I mean, we can say what the technical risk is. What's the threat? What's our risk rating for it? Do we want to rate it differently because of, just because the pen tester called it high, do we necessarily want to call it high? Maybe it's a critical for us, or maybe it's a low for whatever reason that maybe the pen tester didn't see. Same thing goes for like vulnerability assessments in any of those. Risk response, what are we doing about it? Who owns it? Business impact should be a column in there. And with that, we don't want to just put our pen testing stuff in there. We want to put anything we find from our risk assessment, vulnerability assessment, maybe training reports, any kind of compliance requirements, that, like deadlines that might be coming up. I'll take the DFS one, November 1st, MFA on. I'll let you guys enjoy this one. The regulation says all information systems, no exceptions, without a definition of what an information system is. So we want to include those findings in some kind of quarterly review, risk meetings. Let's keep looking at them. Let's not just put them in the ticket. Yeah, maybe where it columns is what ticket it was assigned to if you have some kind of ticketing system. But let's keep reporting on that. That gets you to that metric of, are we making progress? Are we red, yellow, green? If we want to get down to the red, yellow, green, we can say, look, we're making progress on this. Here's the risk that remains. Here's what we need to do about it. Sign the findings to a business owner, not just IT staff. So who does this directly affect on the business? Sometimes it's just like the COO or something like that, but we need someone that also understands what the business risk of it is too, and that they're willing to help push this be kind of a champion for it. And then track the repeat issues. Let's find those governance issues. Pitfalls. We already talked about this. Treating it as a one-time event, burying the reports, not identifying the business risks, reporting only to auditors instead of leadership. In many cases, you may not do any of you have auditors that come in on like an annual or repeat basis? See, it's not everyone, maybe about a third. The rest of us, are just hoping we don't get audited. And then again, fixing root cause symptoms. Year after year, why are we having the same problem? Okay, we got configuration management problems. I'll bet you our configuration management, if it's wrong on that web servers that we're putting out on the internet, I bet you it's wrong somewhere else too. Maybe we've got the process. You know, we got it in policy. Maybe we've got something. Obviously, we're not following it. Are we following it everywhere? Final takeaways. They're not just technical. They're governance. We need to be using them to drive organizational decisions, not just tickets. We need leadership. We need people outside of IT to understand those business impacts. We don't have to be fatalist about it. We don't need to run to them and say, you know, it's guaranteed to happen, which I think most business leaders understand that. I like the one of tying it back to, you know, what's your recovery time objective? You know, how far can you be down before we're in a world of hurt? Or how many of our customers are you okay with it being impacted before this is really a problem? If you're in a highly competitive market, that might be like 0. And then, of course, when we go to those business impacts, I didn't really talk about the remediation part, but obviously we need to be able to have a plan. I had a manager once say, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. I don't 100% agree with that, because you may not have the solution. Isn't that kind of the job of the manager? But have solutions. And no matter what your role is, everyone can have a part to play in this. I don't care if you're the intern or the CEO. Governance is everybody, and you can do simple things, whether it be, you know, put in a new procedure or something like that. I think that's my file. That's my name, that's my email address. If you want to just QR code that to my bio or whatever, that's there. Any other questions? I really liked this conversation that we had going. Yes, sir.
I think there's a gap in there.
Okay.
So the current process is managed security provider comes in, does an audit, does a pen test,
Yep.
identifies, they give you your monthly or your quarterly, annual, whatever report.
Yep.
The IT team and their leadership sit down, we all look at it, yep, okay, got this. The MSP goes away, the IT group sits and looks at it, the manager says, what about this? And the IT team says, well, we don't fix that because it'll break this over here.
Yeah. Okay.
Says, okay, so we've got to accept this risk because it'll break it over here. The gap is, a lot of times and I've been one of them, the technical folks say, we can't break this. There's no advocate in there saying, well, let's look at how we will break it, and is there a way we can do things different?
Yes.
Our current process will break it, but there's nobody advocating for the solution. There's a bunch of IT people saying, I don't dare touch this because we've broken it before and everybody gets angry at us. We don't want to break it again. There's a manager who doesn't understand the process enough to say, let's do it different.
Yep.
And MSP, who could be advocating, is now out of the picture. They never get brought in. No third-party owner comes in and says, show me your process. Or maybe we can't fix it, but maybe your problem component is 10% of your population. We could fix 90%.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah, it's that server on the bottom of the server room that the do not touch sign on it, and no one knows what it is. It's running Windows 3.11. We just don't touch it.
where they said, we don't patch machines because the production machines will break if we patch them.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And management says, oh, we can't stop production. We can't
Right.
do this.
Right.
But somebody could come in and say, well, let's separate the production from the non-production. And, the ones we can,
Take anyone that's worked at a hospital 24/7. Try to patch there. Someone needs something at all the time. But yeah.
There's this missing component of
And
advocate for the solution that is managerial enough to understand the business impact, but technical enough to think outside of the box of the current solution.
yeah, and that we could put that in. Where to go? I lost it. Would be tying in a business, owner as well, to help understand what that impact to the business could be, or okay, how are we going to get rid of this? How are we going to work around it?
Here's an idea that
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, you work into your pen test, you know, especially if it's a third party, you're gonna come back and help with remediation testing, or even remediation help if you don't know how to fix it without breaking something. So you make that part of the contract in the first place, kind of expecting that you're gonna need help fixing stuff.
Yeah.
We're gonna give you the report, but then we're also gonna send somebody in that looks at, well, why is this like this? Explain it to me, help me understand it. Somebody who isn't embracing the problem as a part of the environment, you know.
Right.
There
And
will be people out there that will actually defend continuing the problem because, you know, yeah, it's been here since before I was here. This is just the way we do it.
I hate that. Don't ever say that.
Leave my problem alone.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, or, you know, I don't know. Sally used to do that, and she retired like, 12 years ago, and, no one knows it, so I'm not turning it off. Yeah, we need some.
You bring in that person that can own a resolution or an analysis.
Right.
That understands the business, but also understands the technical side enough to.
Yeah, and I think you could do that internally too. Again, tying in a business owner to say, okay, this is the system that we're having the problem with. Who's that business? You should have a business owner for every system anyway. So.
The only exception I'll take to that is like we bring in pen testers
Yep.
because we don't have the expertise in house. We don't want to pay for the expertise in house.
Right.
We're going to go get somebody else. Well, if you're not going to employ a person whose entire job description is to be disruptive, pay for one. Bring one in from the MSP.
Hey, I'm a consultant. I'll break it. I'll sleep well at night. That's half joking.
I think unless you're in an organization that will own the resource consumption of a person who is disruptive, most places aren't.
Right.
They don't want this. The IT director does not want a person in their group poking holes in everything.
Agreed.
The CFO doesn't want to pay for that person.
Agreed.
So, but the person is necessary. Otherwise, you get here's your report again.
Yep.
We changed the data on this. Hey, we changed the color of the.
Yeah, well, for us, we changed our name this year, so hey, we had to put a new logo at the top.
So, yes, there needs to be consideration for bringing that outside disruptive person.
Yeah, and that could be scoped in too.
And honestly, if everybody gets ticked off at him enough times, you swap him out for, we get rid of Larry, we bring in Sally. Hey, we like Sally. Sally hasn't told us we're wrong enough times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is an awesome conversation.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
my
we
watch
gotta-
tells me I have to shut it down.
Yep.
Want to thank Brendan a lot. He made it through the technical issues today.